Mr. President.
Senator from Tennessee.
Mr. President, I rise today to speak about the Countering Iran's Destabilizing Activities Act of 2017, which passed the Senate Foreign Relations Committee the last month by a vote of 18-3. I'd like to thank the members of our committee and the co-authors of this bill for working in a constructive, bipartisan fashion to craft this legislation. I think it's a good example of how the Senate can still work together to tackle complex and difficult issues. I was in the SCIF recently. It's the place where senators go to read classified information, reviewing intelligence, and it truly is astounding. I know the presiding officer knows this well, but it's truly astounding what Iran continues to do around the world. For people that are capable of so much, their foreign policy is shockingly counter to their own interest. We see the destabilizing act after destabilizing act, from missile launches to arms transfers to terrorist training to illicit financial activities to targeting Navy ships and detaining American citizens. The list goes on and on. And it's past time for us to take steps to protect the interests of the United States and our allies. This bill is the first time Congress has come together since the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, to do just that. For far too long, the agreement, which I strongly opposed, as did our ranking member, as did our presiding officer, it has dictated U.S. policy throughout the Middle East. It's worth noting that the JCPOA is not unlike the Paris Climate Accord. I don't think many people in our country nor many people in this body realize that it's a non-binding political agreement that was entered into by one man using presidential executive authority, and can easily be undone by one man using presidential executive authority. In fact, in many ways, it's easier than the Paris Accord, considering the President doesn't have to take action to exit this agreement. I don't think most Americans understand that. He doesn't have to even take action to exit agreement. All he has to do is decline to waive sanctions. And I think that's been missed. I know the presiding officer is very aware of that. I know the ranking member is very aware of that. But no matter what the President decides, this bill makes it clear that Congress intends to remain involved and will hold Iran accountable for their non-nuclear destabilizing activities. What the nuclear agreement failed to do was allow us to push back against terrorism, human rights issues, their violations of UN Security Council resolutions relative to ballistic missile testing, and to push back against conventional arms purchases, which they're not supposed to be involved in. As many of us predicted at the time, Iran's rogue behavior has only escalated since implementation of the agreement. And this bipartisan bill will give the administration tools for holding Tehran accountable. Let me say this, I don't think there's anybody in this chamber that doesn't believe that the Trump administration, I know there's been a lot of disagreements recently about foreign policy issues and the administration, but I don't think there's anybody here that believes that they are not going to do everything they can to push back against these destabilizing activities. And what we'll be doing today with passage of this, today and tomorrow with passage of this legislation, is standing hand in hand with them as they do that. It also sends an important signal that the U.S. will no longer look the other way in the face of continued Iran aggression. I want to recognize the important work of my colleagues in making this legislation possible. Senator Menendez has been a champion for holding Iran accountable in this bill, but also in decades of work on this issue. He is truly an asset to the Senate, and I thank him for his commitment to many issues, but especially this one. Senators Cotton, Rubio, and Cruz all played an important role in crafting this legislation as well. But finally, let me say this, and this would not have been possible without the support and tireless effort of the ranking member, Senator Cardin, and his great staff. It has truly been a pleasure for me to work with him on the Russia bill that we'll be voting on today at 2 o'clock. but also this legislation. We come from two very different places, representing two very different states, and yet are joined by the fact that we care deeply about making sure that the foreign policy of this country is in the national interest of our citizens, and that we as a Congress and as United States Senate are doing everything we can to help drive positive foreign policy. I want to thank him for that and tell him I'm really proud of the strong bipartisan momentum behind this legislation, which his leadership has helped happen, and I look forward to passage of this bill.